Well, church, if you guys have your Bibles, let's grab those. Let's open up to the book of Matthew, Matthew chapter 5. We are knocking off the rust today as we get you guys back in the room, and it's really good. So grab your Bibles, Matthew chapter 5, and we'll be in verse 9 this morning. If you've been following along with us online and through our live streams, we've been in the book of Matthew looking at the Sermon on the Mount in the series called Upside Down. And we've said over and over again that it seems like the world we're living in right now feels upside down. And so we've been specifically looking at the Beatitudes at the beginning of Matthew chapter 5. And the Beatitudes are really a list of characteristics or virtues that Jesus gives us that shows us what it looks like to follow Him, what it looks like to be a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. And as we've been saying kind of over and over again, these are characteristics that as we follow Jesus and as our hearts are transformed by the grace of God, that will be growing in our lives. We're never going to fully grasp these. We're never going to perfectly attain these characteristics, but we can be growing towards attaining them as God moves in our lives. Someday when Jesus comes back and makes everything right again, then all of these things will be perfect. But for now, we're going to do our best to strive towards them. And so Jesus has said some really interesting things that are very countercultural in these verses. He talks about being blessed by being poor in spirit, or being blessed by mourning, or being blessed by being humble, or being blessed by being meek. And last week he said, blessed are the pure in heart. And so very countercultural things, not what we would anticipate someone saying that this is what it looks like to be blessed or to be happy. But Jesus says, in my kingdom, in the kingdom of God, this is what being blessed looks like. Putting others before you put yourself. And what we're going to see today is that same idea. Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 5, verse 9, that blessed are the peacemakers. So if you have your Bibles with you, grab those. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 5, verse 9 this morning. We've got two more to go as we get close to the end of the Beatitudes. And Jesus says this. He says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. For my kids in the room, if you guys are playing with your activity pack, write the word peace. P-E-A-C-E. Write the word peace. And as we go through our time together, here's my challenge to you. I want you to count how many times I say the word peace. I have a hint. It's going to be a lot. So follow along with me. Hey, Forefront kids watching at home, you guys can do the same. Blessed are the peacemakers, Jesus says, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons and daughters of God. You know, as we open up our Bibles and as we look not just here at the Sermon on the Mount, but we look over the course of the Old Testament and the New, we see that one of the central themes running from Genesis 1 to Revelation 22 is that God is the bringer of peace. That God has set out to bring peace to you and to me. We see back in Genesis chapter 3 when peace was lost, when sin entered the world and we fell. And since then, there has been a lack of peace in our world. And I think we all would agree. We can turn on the news. We can flip on Facebook or Twitter. We see there's not a lot of peace right now, especially in the midst of a coronavirus pandemic. There's not a lot of peace. But yet, the central theme is that Jesus is bringing peace to us. That the story of redemption is a story of Jesus making peace with us so we can make peace with one another. I like how Jesus says in John 16, Jesus says, I have came so that you may have peace. Paul says in Colossians chapter 3 to let the peace of Christ rule richly in our hearts. Simply put, God is a peace-making God. And this concept of peace has been central in what Jesus is leading us to in these Beatitudes. Helping us to see that He has come to bring us peace, but He has also called us to make peace. The Hebrew word for peace, many of you know it, is shalom. Say shalom with me. Shalom. For you kids taking notes, shalom. S-H-A-L-O-M. Shalom. Try to fit that into a sentence this week. But the Hebrew word for peace is shalom. And the Hebrew word for peace means so much more than our English word for peace does. If I asked you to define peace, you might say, well, it's having kind of a tranquil, having tranquility, having a tranquil feeling. Some of you might think of the old Eagle song by Glenn Fry, having that peaceful, easy feeling, right? Some of you think of peace as being free of conflict, but the Hebrew word peace is more than tranquility. It's more than being free from conflict. It's more than Glenn Fry has to say. Here's a great definition of shalom by Cornelius Plantinga, who is an author and former seminary president. He says this. He says, the webbing together of God, humans, and all creation in justice, fulfillment, and delight is what the Hebrew prophets called shalom. We call it peace, but it means far more than mere peace of mind or a ceasefire between enemies. Here's what Plantinga says. He says that in the Bible, shalom means universal flourishing, wholeness, and delight. It's a rich state of affairs in which natural needs are satisfied and natural gifts are fruitfully employed. A state of affairs that inspires joyful wonder as its creator and savior opens doors and welcomes the creatures in whom he delights. Shalom, in other words, is the way things ought to be. Shalom. It's completeness. It's fullness. It's the way things ought to be. Yet, I think like you, or like me, many of you look at our country and our society and our world and you say, man, there just doesn't seem to be shalom. There doesn't seem to be much shalom. Things seem to be broken, not whole. Things seem to be missing, not complete. And I think it's a reminder that peacemaking is hard. That having peace, having shalom is really difficult. And here's the truth, forefront. Here's the truth. You guys know this. True shalom, true peace, the peace that God gives will never be fully realized until that day when Jesus comes back. True shalom will be amazing and perfect and complete then. But until then, right now, in the meantime, our goal is to do everything we can to bring that peace, that shalom, to the world around us, to bring this shalom into our neighborhoods, into our workplaces, into our homes, and our community. You know, I think it's safe to say that this beatitude that we're talking about today, that these beatitudes just in general have been very timely based on what we're going through as a nation and based on what we're going through as a world. But it is so important for us as the church, for us as followers of Jesus, to understand what Jesus is calling to us to here. Because this is central in who Jesus is calling us to be men and women who are purveyors of peace, who take peace to the world around us. And if we miss this, guys, if we miss this call to peacemaking, then we have to ask, are we missing Jesus' call in our lives? What Jesus called us to be, who Jesus has called us to take this message of peace to. God is a peacemaking God, and he calls us to reflect who he is in being peacemakers. So this morning I want to dig into this idea, and there's really three areas that I think we can become peacemakers, that Jesus is calling us to focus on. And the first one is this, that peacemakers are to pursue peace with others. As we look throughout the words of Jesus, we see over and over again that peacemakers are to pursue peace with others. You know, God has a lot to say about pursuing peace. If you're taking notes, I'm just going to give you a couple scripture references. You can look them up later. In Hebrews 12:14, the writer of Hebrews tells us to strive for peace with everyone. In the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 18, Paul says, if possible, as far as it depends on you, be at peace with everyone. Live peaceably with all. How about Psalms 34:14? David says, turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. So there's this idea that God calls us to be seekers and people who pursue peace. You kids keeping track of those? I see a couple check marks. We're supposed to be pursuers of peace. And I think by even saying this, by seeing there's so many scripture references in the Bible talking so much about peace, it's a clear identification that there's a problem with peace. That there's a problem with relationships, that we don't have enough peace. If we're supposed to pursue peace, that means that there is a lack of peace in the world. You don't have to raise your hands here, but how many of you, in say the past 30 days, have maybe saw a picture of somebody on Facebook, or saw an email from a coworker, or ran into somebody you know at Target or at the park, and when you met that person, there was a churning inside of you? and you did everything you could. It changed your demeanor. And maybe you even did everything you could to avoid that person. You walked down the other aisle, or you turned the other way, or you forwarded that email to somebody else. Why do we do that? Because we know in those relationships there is a lack of peace. And it leads to that churning inside of us. There's something that stands out to us. It was a conversation or a situation or an exchange. Somebody has said something that led to a lack of peace. And now you and that person, in a way, are at odds with each other. Hopefully none of you would raise your hand in the last 30 days, but we've all been there, haven't we? We've all had conflicts at the workplace or at home where we want to avoid. And I think we realize in that moment is that relationships are hard. That relationships with other people, whether it's family, it's friends, it's in the workplace, it's really difficult. 100 years ago, the great poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "To love another human is perhaps the most difficult of all of our tasks." And I think we all know that's true. Whether it's marriage, it's our kids, it's our families, right? Brothers and sisters, moms and dads, kids, you guys get this too, right? It's in the workplace. Relationships are hard. Relationships take a lot of work. And the challenge I think that a lot of us face is that we find ourselves in one of two camps when it comes to relationships with each other. We are either conflict averse or conflict charging, right? So for a lot of us, we just hate conflict, and we're going to do everything we can to avoid it. That even means appeasing the situation, giving in whatever has to happen to avoid the conflict. For others, when you see conflict, you're like a bull and a red flag, right? You're just going to take it head on. The problem is, in both camps, it leads you to a place where peace is missing, where there needs to be reconciliation, where you either step on or get stepped on. And the good news is Jesus knows this. Jesus knows our frailty. Jesus knows how difficult relationships are. So he gives us this call to pursue peace at all times. See, what Jesus wants us to see is that peacemaking is primarily a heart issue. We think about peacemaking as an action or an attitude, but it's primarily a heart issue. If you've got your Bible, grab those and just scan a few verses down to Matthew 5, verse 21. Matthew 5, verse 21. Jesus is going to show us how relationships are all about the heart. He says this, Matthew 5, 21, Jesus says, "That you have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment.'" Jesus is pointing back to the 10 Commandments, and he's saying, you have heard that in our Mosaic law, that murder, the action of murder leads to judgment. And we can look at our society and say the same thing, right? Murder must be judged. He says that you've heard, you shall not murder, and whoever murders is liable to judgment. But look at verse 22. Notice what Jesus does. He makes it a heart issue. He makes anger and hate a heart issue equal to murder. He says this, verse 22, "But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to counsel, and whoever says, 'You fool,' will be liable to the hell of fire." Now, when I read that, I'm like, wow, Jesus, that's pretty tough. That's pretty tough language. But what Jesus is trying to get us to see is the reason that peace doesn't exist is not because of the actions of people, it's because of the hearts of people. We talked about last week, the Beatitude, blessed are the pure in heart. And we saw that Jesus tells us that out of our hearts come all kinds of bad things, that our actions come from the attitude of our hearts first. And so he's saying, you need to check your heart. You need to change your heart. And it's no wonder that this call to be a peacemaker comes right after the call to have a pure heart. Because Jesus wants us to see that our heart is really what sets the tone for our lives, for our actions, and for our attitudes. And he says this, many of the issues we face in life with relationships are because of situations that start in our heart that we could avoid or we could fix if we just knew how. Just think about relationships in your life that you maybe have seen go sideways or you have seen conflict in before. Typically, in that conflict, there was something inside of you that led to an attitude or a view of somebody that led you to maybe hold a grudge against them, that led you to maybe gossip against them, that maybe led you to say something hurtful to them. Maybe it was envy, or it was jealousy, or it was anger. But typically, the things that have fractured relationships have started here. Or maybe somebody said that to you. It started in their hearts first. So Jesus is telling us here that we need to start inside our hearts first. And he puts anger in your heart for your brother or your coworker or that neighbor or your friend on the level of murder. And what he's trying to do is to get your attention and to say, pay close attention to the attitude of your heart. Because when you allow grudges and gossip to start to take over your heart, what happens? There's a slow burn to anger and to hate. Jesus says, catch it early and fix it. Have you guys ever done that before? You ever had that happen in your heart? I know I have. I love this quote by Sinclair Ferguson. He says this, that we treat the damage we do with our lips sometimes very lightly because we do not see the corpses we leave behind. You know, our words are powerful. Our words can lead devastation. They create a lack of peace. James says this in James 3:8-9. He says, but no human being can tame the tongue. It's a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. And this is why racism is so ugly. This is why injustices are so ugly. This is why gossip is so ugly, because it does the opposite of making peace. Jesus wants us to become peacemakers. I think we've all seen this play out in our lives. So how do we deal with this? How do we deal with issues of the heart that lead me to having conflict with people, with my family, with my friends, with my coworkers? How do we deal with the anger inside of our heart that does much hurt to others? See, I think a lot of this conflict that we feel in life is because we feel like something is lacking in ourselves. We feel like maybe somebody took something from us or something we deserved we didn't get. And it leads us to these emotions. And what happens is we don't get it. We lash out. We hold grudges. We gossip. But what Jesus wants us to see is that we no longer have to think this way because we have peace with him. Here's a principle for us to take home. It's this, that Jesus says that peace with others begins when we are at peace with ourselves because we are at peace with God. Think about that. Peace with you is possible when I'm at peace with myself because I'm at peace with God. But when I'm not at peace with God and when I'm not at peace here, I can't be at peace with you because I'm going to be trying to lash out to you when you have something that I think I deserve. And it can get really messy. And here's the reality. Even when you know Jesus, even when Jesus is directing you and you're basing your life off the fact that you're finding who you are in him, you're still going to have conflict. There's still going to be times when we say things we shouldn't say, somebody says something to us. So we have to learn to navigate those situations. When I was a teenager, I don't know if any of you guys have teenagers or people that are close to teenagers at home, or been a teenager yourself, but you know that sometimes conflict can come at home with parents. And I'm sure none of you really have experienced much of that, but when I was a teenager, I was kind of a hothead, and I was pretty strong-willed. My dad is like my twin, right? So my dad was about the same, pretty hothead and pretty strong-willed. And we would get into it over things, and it would escalate to where we said things we shouldn't have said. And you'd go away, and I think you guys have experienced this. You go away and you feel a lack of peace, right? You have that conflict, a conversation with somebody, and you just don't feel very good about it. But my dad did something every time, and it was so refreshing. My dad would call me that same day. We'd give a couple hours to cool off, and he'd call me. Even if I was the one that said the hurtful thing, my dad would initiate the call, and he would say, hey, I'm sorry things turned out like that. I'm sorry the conversation went that way. I'm sorry I said this. And you know what? It was so refreshing to me, it caused me to say the same thing to him. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said. What I said was dumb. I shouldn't have said it. I didn't mean it. And in that moment, we reconciled. We never let that anger or that conflict carry over. And I can tell you it's impacted my relationship with my dad my entire life. And because my dad modeled that for me, I try to do that with my kids. Have you guys ever seen that modeled for you and for your life? Conflict's inevitable. It's going to happen. But are you prepared to reach over the divide and be the peacemaker. See, Jesus is calling us to the commitment to make peace. And when we feel the tension, we go and make peace. And this is so important to Jesus. Notice what he says. Look back at Matthew chapter 5. Matthew 5, verses 23 through 24. Jesus tells us something that's actually pretty shocking here. He says this in verse 23. So if you are offering your gift to the altar, remember, he just said, if you are angry with your brother, you've committed murder in your heart. He says, so if you are offering your gift at the altar and then remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. In the first century, the way you worshiped God was by taking your offering to the temple. And Jesus is saying this. Don't miss this. This is key. He's saying that if you have a problem with a friend, a family member, a brother, somebody across the street, somebody at your workplace, it's more important that you fix that issue than for you to go to church. It's that important. And we know how important it is to go to church. So Jesus says, in modern day illustration, if you're driving to church, you're driving to Forefront this morning and you realize you have a problem with your brother, turn around, go to your brother's house, and fix that problem first. Jesus wants us to take it so serious that, because what he's saying here, don't miss this is key. He's saying that, can you truly worship Jesus with a full heart, with a pure heart, if you have conflict with somebody out there? You need to go fix that situation and be at peace first before come and worship with a pure heart. It's a tall ladder Jesus is asking us to stand on here. But what Jesus is saying is, look, I will give you the strength to do it because you have peace with me. Now you can be at peace to go have peace with others. So here's the question for us. As you hear this, as you hear Jesus say this, does somebody come to mind for you that you have conflict with? When you heard Jesus' words, did you get a mental picture of somebody? Is there somebody that you need to call today when you leave church? Is there somebody you need to send a Facebook message to or send a text to? Maybe it's been 20 years and you haven't talked to that old friend in a long time or that old coworker. Could you imagine how refreshing it would be for them to hear from you, to apologize for that thing you said or the way you left that situation? How about for those of you that are married, do you fight well? There's going to be conflict, right? Conflict's going to come. But do you use responsible words? Are you using kind words? For parents, are you taking the initiative to ask forgiveness to your kids when you feel that tug? So Jesus wants us to see that we need to be people that pursue peace with others. But not just that. We don't stop there. Secondly, Jesus wants us to pursue peace in our society. Jesus wants us to pursue peace in our society. I think we look around our society right now. You flip on the news at night, you flip on Facebook and you see pictures of protests and riots and you hear stories from the protesters of things that have happened to them. You hear stories of maybe homeowners and business owners who have lost businesses, and you see there is not a lot of peace right now. But what Jesus is calling us to do is to be the people that go and make peace. And I think it begs the question, how did we get to the point in our nation? How do we get to the point as people when there are entire communities of people who feel like they have no voice? How do we get to the point in our nation where there's entire communities of people that feel like they have been misunderstood or have been singled out? It's heartbreaking to hear that. But I wonder, could it be that people have been so focused on getting their own peace that they've missed pursuing the peace of others? Could it be that I've been so focused on getting my piece of peace that I haven't worried about making sure that you get yours? See, I wonder if that is the issue, because I think here's a principle for us. Lying under the surface is the natural inclination in all of our hearts to think of myself first. Lying under the surface is natural inclination to want my peace, to look at my situation and say, I want peace in my life, I want peace in my family, I want peace in my home. Now, if you get peace because I get peace, great. But I'm going to focus on getting my peace first. But I think the reason our country has the backlash that it does is we're seeing the repercussions of this attitude of thinking me first. whatever the situation may be. Because if the formula is me before you, then we're never going to have peace. Let's be honest. But if the formula changes to say you, then me, then all of a sudden we're going to see that peace really is possible. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, if you know much about the history of Israel and Judah, the people living in Judah at the time were captured by Babylon and exiled out of the Middle East over to Babylon, out of Jerusalem, out of Judea, out of Israel, and sent over to Babylon. And you got to imagine how difficult that would have been if you were a Jewish man or woman living in that time. You have been pulled out of your home, you have been captured, and you have been sent to an enemy city and told that you're in exile and this is where you're supposed to live. So, very difficult moment, no peace, all conflict. But then the prophet Jeremiah, God speaks to Jeremiah and he says this. Look with me, Jeremiah 29 verse 7. God tells Jeremiah to tell the nation of Israel, "But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. For in its welfare you will find welfare." Now, notice what God is saying. He's saying, I have exiled you from Judea to Babylon, from your home to the enemy country, from the comfort of where you lived to now a prison, basically. But while you're there, seek the welfare of the city. Seek the welfare of the Babylonians. Seek the welfare of your enemies. It's crazy. Could you imagine hearing that? Seek the welfare of the people that are opposing me. Seek the welfare of the people that are imprisoning me. But God is trying to get us to see that when we seek the good and the peace for society around us first, it brings peace to me. See, when I seek peace for me first, conflict and devastation can be left out there and I don't even know it. But when I seek the peace first out there in my society, the end result is my life is more peaceful, that I see more peace. We had the formula backwards. And so God is wanting us to see, Jesus is telling us here, we need to step out of the cushion of our own comfort and the desire for our own peace and step in and pursue peace for the society around us. It's like what Paul says in Philippians chapter 2, verse 4. He says, be like Jesus and look to the interests of others before you look to the interest of yourself. And Jesus tells us over and over again that as we seek peace for others, it's going to cost you something. It's going to cost you something. That there may be persecution that comes. We'll see that next week. That there may be arrows and punches thrown. That you may take a hit in the public eye. People may look down on you. But Jesus says when you do that, you're going to find peace by pursuing peace for others. It's like Paul says in Romans 12:18. If at all possible, pursue peace. Whatever it's up to you, pursue peace. So you might be sitting there wondering, well, what can I really do to pursue peace, though? You know, I don't really have, maybe you feel like you don't have the influence to pursue peace, or you don't have a platform to pursue peace. You know what you can do to pursue peace? You can start by praying about peace. Right? We can all start by praying about peace. You know what else we can do to pursue peace? We can volunteer for organizations that are pursuing peace. We can step out of our comfort zone and go give our time and our talent and our treasure to help those pursue peace. But you know what you can also do? You can also step into situations where you see conflict and a lack of peace and speak up and speak the truth and share peace. How many of you guys have ever seen those bumper stickers out there that say tolerate? I think we've all seen those, haven't we? You guys know these bumper stickers? Each symbol recognizes a different religion or science. Tolerate. And it's kind of one of the words of our culture, right? Tolerate. Tolerance. But what does it mean to be tolerant? It means to basically put up with people you don't agree with, right? But here's the thing. Jesus nowhere tells us to be tolerant. Jesus nowhere tells us to tolerate. You know what Jesus tells us to do? To love one another. Sacrificially. Don't just tolerate each other. Love each other. Put others first. Put yourself second. Jesus says, don't just love your friends, but who? Your enemies. Pray for your enemies. Be at peace with people you wouldn't normally be at peace with. And see, this is why what Jesus says to us is so countercultural. This is why it's so radical, because Jesus says in John 13:35 that the world will know that you're mine, that you're a follower of me by the way that you love one another. When you and I love people that don't have anything in common with us, you know what that says? Something bigger than ourselves is going on here. That says that our hearts have been changed by Jesus, that we are now seeing life through a new lens. And the world will take notice to that. And because of the fact that Jesus has changed our hearts and we now have peace that Christ gives us, we have a peace that can transcend all understanding. We can truly pursue peace with everybody, including our enemies. I love this quote by Matt Chandler. It's such a great quote. He says this. He says, love your enemies with the purpose that you will have no enemies. It's really good, isn't it? Love the people that you don't agree with the purpose that you'll understand them. Love those that are different than you, that maybe don't like you, with a purpose for peace. So Jesus calls us to pursue peace in our society. How do we do this? What does this even look like? A couple quick thoughts. I think we can pursue peace in our society when we begin to view every situation in light of the gospel. When we say, Jesus came and gave his life for this, how in turn should I act? How should I treat you based on how Jesus treated me? But I think in addition to that, we need to start seeing people as being people that have been the same as us, corrupted by sin, influenced by the enemy, turned away by society. We need to see people as the children of God, as people that God has made in his image, just like us. We all bleed the same color. Whether we speak different languages, we all are created by the same maker. It doesn't matter where we come from, or what we look like, or what our culture is. What matters is that God has called us to seek peace and to be peacemakers. And so because of this, we should be the least offended people in the world, and we should be the least offendable people in the world. It should take a lot to get under your skin. Because Jesus came and gave his life for us, we should be willing to do the same for others. So we need thick skin, but we need to view every situation in light of the gospel. So Jesus says, pursue peace with others and pursue peace in society. Thirdly, and we'll close with this one, Jesus says this, peacemakers help find peace by pointing them to Jesus. Ultimately, it gets back to the fact that I can never truly have peace with you unless I have peace with me. And I'll never truly have peace inside of me until I have peace with God. See, the reality is that we are born sinners, fallen, short of the glory of God, and because of that, we are at enmity with God. We are fighting with God. We are at war with God, and we have a lack of peace in our lives. But when, and only when, we come to know Jesus and the saving grace that he gives, can we truly pursue peace with others. I love what Paul writes in Romans 5:8. He says this. He says, for God demonstrated his own love to us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. We didn't deserve to be forgiven. We did nothing to earn that. We didn't even ask Jesus for forgiveness. He came first and gave himself for us. God loved us first. And he's calling us to now go and love others first. Jesus stepped out of heaven and stepped to this earth to trade places with us. And now, as his sons and his daughters, he calls us now to find our identity in him and go and pursue peace with everyone else. I love this quote by Brennan Manning. He says this. He says, define yourself radically as one beloved by God. This is the true self. Every other identity is illusion. Manning says, God's love for you and his choice of you constitute your worth. Accept that and let it become the most important thing in your life. And as we see our value in Jesus, as we find our worth in being a son and daughter of God, as being blessed by God because he came and saved us, we realize that we are now new and have been saved for a purpose to be peacemakers. You are now a new creation. You are now set aside as a peacemaker. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away, behold, the new has come. All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. Forefront, Jesus came to make you new. To make you new. A new people. A new person. As Paul says in Galatians 3, a people that have no dividing lines. A people that are all children of God. And he calls us now to be ambassadors of Jesus Christ. An ambassador was someone who rode ahead of the king to make peace with the enemy army. And sometimes that ambassador didn't make it back, but it was an important job because his call was to make peace. I want to close with a story. My uncle, his name's Larry, Uncle Larry Beecham, he just retired as a captain from the Chesterfield Fire Department in St. Louis, and he's got so many great stories of, he was part of the SWAT team, and he would dive into burning buildings and all kinds of cool stuff out of helicopters. Well, in 2005, when Hurricane Katrina hit, my uncle and some of his fireman buddies decided that they were going to go down and help. So they loaded up their trucks, they drove down to New Orleans, and they were going to help work with FEMA to help people find some temporary housing because everybody's homes were flooded. But they got to New Orleans and they found that there were some miscommunications and that FEMA wasn't ready yet to place anyone yet in these temporary trailers. So all these families that are just living outdoors, right? Their homes have been destroyed and they don't have a place to live yet. And so in a way, my uncle and his fireman friends didn't have anything to do. They didn't know what to do. So they decided that they were just going to go out in the neighborhoods and start caring for people. So they started walking out in neighborhoods, and they started helping people look for belongings and start cleaning up things, and that led to the opportunities for them to start praying with people. And my uncle and his buddies were Christians, and they started praying. Started sharing the gospel with these people who just lost everything. And in that moment, they were peacemakers. They ran into the devastation of a hurricane to make peace. And I think Jesus is calling us to do the same. He's saying, blessed are the peacemakers, for you are God's children. For you are reflecting your Father in heaven's goal for your life, to run into the damage and the wreckage and to bring peace every place you can. Blessed are the peacemakers. You may feel like right now you're looking at this world and you're saying, I don't even know what to do. I don't know where to help. I don't know where to start. But here's what I think God would tell you. There's somebody in your life. There is somebody in your workplace or in your family or in your neighborhood that needs peace. And Jesus wants you to run into the wreckage and make peace. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be the sons and the daughters of God. I pray we can reflect that in our lives too. Let's pray together.